us today in the first session of our Fake News in Asia webinar series. And in our first session, we will be hearing from scholars and experts from 4 countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, and India, about their countries' experiences with fake news and see whether there are any lessons learned we can find from each country. And this hopefully will start a discussion about the problem of fake news in this region. If you have any questions, please let us know via the Q&A function. We will first go through the 4 presentations, and then we will do a discussion in the end. But if there's any questions that you think of during a presentation, then feel free to start typing it down. Later in the discussion, I can read your question, or I can also bring you in and join us in a discussion if you want to talk and verbalize your question, or if you want to type it in the chat, that's also fine. So thank you very much again for joining, and we will now start our presentation. So our first presentation is from Dr. Bahia Omar. She is an associate professor in the School of Communication at University Science Malaysia. She has published lots of studies across different areas, including online news consumption, social media effects, news reporting, framing, and of course, sharing of fake news. And that's why we've invited her to share about her work and about her observations when it comes to this current situation in Malaysia. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Omar.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Bahia from the School of Communication, University Science Malaysia. Thank you, Edson, for the introduction. The topic that I'm going to talk today is about the causes, consequences, and countermeasures of fake news in Malaysia. So just a brief introduction. Fake news is deliberately fabricated information, and including rumors, conspiracy theories, hoax, and deception content that is intentionally or unintentionally disseminated on social media. It is not a new phenomenon. It has become a great concern because of its rapid and uncontrollable spread on social media. So before I go into the topic, let me first bring you to the context of Malaysia. You need to know about political, media, and digital landscape of Malaysia before we go into the fake news scenario. So Malaysia is a multicultural and multi-religious society, and we have major ethnic group, Malay, Chinese, Indian, and our political landscape is also basically based on ethnic and dominated by a coalition of national coalition that has this group parties from different ethnic groups. And if you look at media landscape, we are pretty much belongs to a country that has whose media are controlled by the government. There are many acts and laws that govern our media. And for digital landscape, about 90% of us are internet users. And if you look at the trend, the daily use of internet has increased. I mean, the time span has increased, and most of the online activities for Malaysian are text communication, social media, and watching videos. Okay, so now we go to the topic: fake news in Malaysia, causes and consequences. So the general outlook of for Malaysia is that if you look at social media and messaging platform, top famous platform are YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. And of these platforms, WhatsApp was regarded as the most popular medium for misinformation, perhaps because of the privacy, the security that WhatsApp has. And Malaysia is among, a recent study said that Malaysia is among 70 countries that use cyber troopers to spread fake news. This happened during the general election 2018, where where this issue has been raised a major concern, because there are many fake bots that serve as cyber troopers, and they are professionally trained as well. And there's a study that said 15% of Malaysians believe fake news, 48% sometimes believe, and 31% say rarely believe, and 6% said never. So meaning half of the sample tend to believe fake news. So now we look at the types of fake news in Malaysian context. In 2017, MCMC, Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commission, said there are about 4 themes of fake news in Malaysia: politics, religious, health, and crime. But recently, in 2022, they come up with a more specialized categories. Governance, about 37% of fake news about governance, 14% about crime, 14% about health, 13% about consumerism, and 9% about security. So this is according to their study. Okay, so let's just look at an example of fake news related to each of the category. I'm not going to talk all, there are many, so I just choose 4 to illustrate, but I'm going to talk about some sample only. So let's see how about fake news about governance. If you see case 1, they use this governor of the central bank to show that she endorsed big contract. This is fake. Okay, this is actually to make legalize Bitcoin in Malaysia. And if you look at number 4, case number 4, where fake account being created to actually for our general director of health. This is during COVID-19. And if you look at case number 3, it says that the king has said you should reject coalition party. So this is an example of governance. If you look at crimes, if you look at case 3 and case 4, there are many of cases like this where they use these big companies and they say that they are celebrating 15th anniversary, and therefore they have this lucky draw, they have this survey, and when people give information, it's a form of scam. So there are a lot of like this, and also some use letterhead of certain agencies to spread fake news. So for health, if you look at, these are some of the samples of fake news related to health. If you look at case 3, this one is quite funny because they use this Director General of Health as promoting certain product for blood pressure to lower blood sugar. So that kind of news also, they fabricate this kind of news. And if you look at case number 4, it's common when they start saying there are cases of COVID in certain area and to create panic for that area. And also case number 1 is about death of people due to vaccination, which are all false. So examples of fake news related to consumerism, because we are Muslim country, so majority are Muslim. So some of the issues is about related to belief. I think if you look at case number 2, because Muslims do not eat pork, okay, so they tend to make a fake news saying certain food from certain restaurant have this element of pork, or they claim some fake news tend to show that certain eateries do not have this halal certificate, and some fabricated this halal certificate as well. Okay, and related to security, if you look at case 1 and case 4, is about gathering or riot, but they are not happening. This riot did not happen, but somehow people circulated it. And case 3 is about lockdown in certain area that is fake, that are fake. If you look at case 2, it's quite unique. There was a news saying that there was a tiger in one state of Malaysia, but actually the tiger the news is from India, so it's not in Malaysia, but they tend to create some kind of news like that. So if you look at causes, there are not many studies about Malaysia related to fake news, but my observation, if I try to discuss it in terms of whether it's intentional or unintentional. So sharers, fake news sharers are normally not unintentional. So you don't have intention to share fake news, but somehow we share it. So there's one study from Balakrishnan that says altruism, the desire to help people, and ignorance, entertainment, these are the causes why Malaysians share fake news. So in my own study, which I've just finished writing, I compare between online environmental factors, whether they trust the network norm of reciprocity and tie strength, whether these have effect with user factors. And the study found both are influential to cause fake news sharing, but the online environmental, in terms of relative influence, online environmental factors have more influence than user factor. So when I look into intentional fake news sharing, what causes them to intentionally share fake news? And most of the time, the creators are intentional, right? Why they create the news, the fake news? Because they intentionally want to gain profit, financial profit, or cause panic, anxiety, or disharmony, or create people to distrust the government and promote pro-government, attack the opposition, or suppress participation through personal attack and harassment. These are there are no dedicated studies that show this, but this is my observation, and I think this is a universal causes for every place. But if you look at contextual factors, meaning that unique to Malaysia, there's one study, interesting study by Tapsel, that says people share fake news because spreading falsehood is one of the weapons of the weak. Meaning that the powerless is trying to shatter those in power by sharing fake news. So this is quite interesting to me, because in Malaysia we are, as I said, in the political landscape, we are ruled by one party for a very long time, for 30 years. It's only on 2018 that Pakatan Harapan, Alliance of Hope, won the election, but it's only lasts for 22 months. And then the original party comes again. So it's so powerful, the party. So it could be a weapon for the weak to spread these fake news. There's no way for them to shatter them other than spreading rumors, right? And another contextual factors is because of the media is subject to government control. And when media, mainstream media, are subject to government control, people tend to feel that the mainstream media is less credible, and they go for social media, which are not controlled, and this lead to fake news sharing as well. And if you look at consequences, I group them into two levels. At individual and society level, they can cause panic, false hope, threat to personal information, harmful for mental and physical health, and that can also can create confusion and misunderstanding over issues. But at country level, it can cause political crisis. That's what happened in Malaysia. 2018 general election is pretty much associated with growth of fake news and create political crises until today. So and also can create economic instability and social disharmony. So let's go for countermeasures. So in Malaysia, we have this one government agency called Malaysia Communication and Multimedia Commission, MCMC, who is responsible for monitoring social media for fake news and sensitive posts. So the key for this agency is to restore harmony. Why? Because we are multicultural and multi-religious country. So the harmony is very delicate. It's hard to maintain. So they need to have this governing body to maintain it. And major initiatives that have been adopted is law enforcement. Among them, there are many. Among them, the major one are 3: law enforcement, fact-checking platform, and digital literacy. So let me go into this. So for law enforcement, Malaysia is one of the countries that use law, okay? And it falls under the Preview of Communication and Multimedia Act 1998, CMA. And under this act, it covers all inclusive, okay? And it covers all material published. Even mainstream media are ruled by this law. And it says that if you are found guilty, can be maximum fine of 50,000 ringgit and also 1 year of imprisonment or both. And later, in 2018, Malaysia introduced this Anti-Fake News Law Act, a law that specifically deals with fake news. And this is a very controversial law because it was rushed to be tabled in Parliament in time of general election 2018. And as I said, in 2018, the opposition party won the election, so this Pakatan Harapan repelled the act letter. But then recently, in March 2021, Malaysia declared emergency ordinance 2021 specifically for fake news ordinance, and it was declared without preliminary approval because using COVID-19 as pretext, meaning because of during COVID-19 there are so many fake news disseminated, so they come out with this declare of emergency ordinance. And what happened is every time Malaysia tried to introduce new law or implement new enforcement, this act has been criticized heavily, domestically and internationally, because this move has always been associated with infringement of freedom of expression. And I found out that when this law, the emergency ordinance was declared, our ranking in terms of World Press Freedom Index dropped 18 points, quite a lot. So it's received unfavorable response when law is being introduced. Because why? Because it relates to people's freedom to speak up, the freedom of press. It kind of infringes this law, this freedom. And the countermeasure number 2 is fact checking. We have the sebenarnya.my, which means in actuality or in reality, and this has been launched in 2017. And it is a one-stop center for Malaysians to verify suspicious news. And basically, this platform is launched by MCMC and the Ministry of Information. It involves inter-agency coordination, meaning MCMC will work with various government agencies who will issue public statements explaining, clarifying, and refuting any false or misleading news. And it's kind of news rebuttal and clarification strategies. And this also include quick response team. The team will respond. I mean, they check and then we'll explain whether this is false or not. And this has been criticized as well as one side of the truth where it's from the government, but one study said it's not. Okay, all right. And the last countermeasure is about digital literacy. Like many other countries as well, we have a nationwide campaign, tak pasti jangan kongsi, and also many advocacy campaign. So we go for the conclusion. As a conclusion, I would say fake news is a complex issue. At one end, we want to deter the spread using law enforcement. On the other end, we want to curtail the spread by providing digital literacy. And we have to acknowledge that fake news will continue to exist. And the greatest challenge for Malaysia is to build this resilience towards false news. And for Malaysia, fighting fake news is a collective effort, and standing together is the key to win the fight against fake news.
Thanks so much
for listening.
Thanks so much, Dr. Omar. Thank you. So from Malaysia, we'll now go to looking at the situation in Indonesia, and that presentation will be from Dr. Ika Idris. She's an associate professor at the Public Policy Program at Monash University in Indonesia. Her research focuses on government public communication, social media and public relations evaluation, and internet and society. So without further ado, Dr. Idris.
Thank you, Edson. Okay, let me share my presentation. All right. So I think that's a generous introduction, so I will not introduce myself anymore. But my presentation today will be focusing on Indonesia's war on fake news, ignoring the closer enemies. So in the system of fake news, I will talk about at least two actors that worsening the problem, and then ignored by the government and other stakeholders when they are going on war on fake news. So before I begin, what are the common topics for hoaxes or fake news in Indonesia? A national survey by the Indonesian Ministry of Communication and Information in 2020 and 2021, politics, health, and religions come out as the top three topics related to hoaxes. And then after that is environment, riot, disaster, and other topics of fake news. So this morning, I will talk about a topic that combine politics and religion. So combine the top one and top two. It is related to Pancasila. Pancasila is Indonesia state philosophy or a state ideology. And then this conversation happened last year. And when I analyzed the conversation, I realized that while most of efforts in combating fake news focusing on empowering citizens, doing digital media literacy, closing websites and social media accounts, and establishing fact-checking organization. But I found two actors in this conversation that any stakeholders just ignore them. So from this conversation, there are two, I call it enemies, yeah, that Indonesia ignores. First is the website that publish provoking information but supports government narrative and agendas. Second one is a credible media that turns into yellow journalism that also producing sensational articles for clicks and propagating unverified information. So last year, or if you ever read news about Indonesia, any conversation related to state ideology is potentially come into heat discussion or heat debates. Last year, and it happened yearly because we have a Pancasila Day every June 1st. So it's like annual conversation. So last year, there's a narrative that that Pancasila must not, that religion must not go beyond the state ideology. And even there's a statement from the head of Agency for Pancasila Ideology Education that said that Pancasila must be above everything, including religion. As you know, Indonesia is the largest Muslim population in the world, yeah. So that kind of statement trigger heated debates and discussion. And then I analyzed the conversation using Facebook tools, CrowdTangles, and then I took samples, 10,000 topos, and then from that samples, I found out that the largest cluster was from the government supporter group named Sintesa News. They claims them, Sintesa claims us as independent media that deliver stories and news. But if you look into the content, they create fake news. And the most active page in the cluster, so this cluster dominate the whole conversation. If you see the picture, they are the largest one, and then they are trying to dominate the conversation. And then the most active page is Pemuda Pancasila se-Indonesia. Pemuda is youth, Pancasila youth. It's a far-right paramilitary organization. So from this cluster, I found at least, I found a lot, but I want to talk about two cases. The first one is the type of fake news I found in this one is fact fabrication and the use of undisclosed bylines. So that time there's a news that Ministry of Religious Affairs will require all the religious preachers to be certified. But apparently the certification it's not a must. So that time it triggers controversy because the religious preachers, some of them, they are reluctant to be certified. So they get a statement from other news and then they frame it as if it was a requirement by the government. The second one, there's a video from the religious preacher, but it has been cut. And then they frame it that the religious preacher doesn't want to sing or reluctant to sing the Indonesia national anthem. And then they frame the news, the types of fake news I found is fabrication and full fabrication. Because they mentioned that Indonesia people want to kick this religious preacher out from the country, but we don't know exactly who is the Indonesian people that wants to kick this. So they fabricate the information, and then they said that this religious preacher must be banned. But then later, the religious preacher clarified that the video was cut and not providing the whole context. So this is the first one. And then the second one, beside the news website or fake news website that support gun narrative, the second one, the second actor, I also found when I analyzed the top posters during the conversation. So the top posters, apparently all four of them, three out of four is from the news organization, a credible news organization. But I will just discuss for this morning the top one. It's from Pikiran Rakyat Media Network. So that time I was curious because Pikiran Rakyat is the largest local newspaper in West Java province. So it's in Jakarta, the capital city, but it's in West Java. So I was curious how come this local newspaper posts a lot about Pancasila. And apparently, when I look to the media, why they post a lot? Because Pikiran Rakyat now established an incubator for content creators. In June 2020, it says that they have 60 content incubators with a minimum 3 people in each incubators. And then Pikiran Rakyat content creator, they have target to produce, each of them have target to produce around 8 to 10 contents daily. So if we count it, it will be around the minimum content they will create, it will be around 100 to 1,000 until 1,400. 1,200 to 1,400. So that's the minimum content that they will create, and they have it in every local, in every cities. They have a lot of network. But what is the role of this content creator network in the Pancasila conversation? So when I look into the posts or the news that they are published, they don't have a clear agenda. So related to Pancasila or state ideology, usually Indonesia news organization, they already have agenda setting, and then they are very careful because this is an issue that could lead into conflict and violence. So this is a very sensitive issue for Indonesia. But that time when I look into the issue, apparently they will use any, or they will work on any social media tweets, they will work on any social media conversation and create it as a content, and then they don't have a particular agenda setting. They publish about Israel and Palestine and how it relates to Pancasila, and then they also criticize the government. They also publish a statement that criticize the government, that support the government. So it's not clear what is the agenda for this from this network. And then there's one interesting article that I want to focus on. It is when the Ministry of Religious Affairs being criticized by the netizen. But when I look into the tweets, it's only 90 comments. And not all of them criticize the Ministry of Religious Affairs, but the news stated that the ministry tweets is being attacked by the netizen. I imagine if it's like an offline demonstration, a group of people, maybe like 50 people go to the ministry office and then protest there. 50 or 90 people will not make news. But how come this is like 90 comments and then they frame it that the ministry got being attacked by the netizen? So this is an example. Pikiran Rakyat Media Network on Pancasila Conversation it's an example when a credible media turns into yellow journalism outlets because the content creators aiming for clicks, mainly for financial driven because they have a target to create 8 to 10 articles. They propagate unverified information only from tweets and then only from politician opinions, and they don't have a priority agenda for sensitive issue that could lead to conflict and violence. I think we can understand if they use clickbaits for food recipe or for maybe a lifestyle article, but for this issue, using clickbaits is really, I think at some point it's already polluting the public sphere, and because it's only for profit. Yeah. So my conclusion from this conversation, I think that at first that there's a cherry picking stance. The Indonesian government has been closing down websites and social media accounts to spread hoaxes. But however, during the heated conversation on Pancasila, the networks of government supporters dominated the conversation, and this fake news media still exists until now. The second one is the elephant in the newsroom. News media organization established incubator for content creators whose works are driven by clicks. I know I understand that right now news media organization is trying to establish new model or new journalism that is creating more profit for them. But then the Indonesian Press Council and even Journalist Association declare war on fake media. They call it media abal-abal, yeah. But how come they excuse the content creators that and its yellow journalism practice? So I think that's my conclusion. If I still have time, I will share just 1 minute about the what is currently being done to address the problem. So right now, the Ministry of Communication and Information has a government literacy program since 2018. It is a big program. It is the largest literacy program. And it reached last year 12 million people from 2,000 webinar classes, and the budget is 1 billion rupiah. But the content, if you look at it, it's emphasized how to become an obedient citizen, and then it's emphasized on the information and electronic transaction law, and exaggerating on economic advantage of social media. At the same time, the method is one-way webinar. So they have 20,000 webinars 12 million, but in one webinar they will have this many speakers. We'll have like 4 to 5 speakers, and then I think we all know, because we are working on the media literacy too, we all know that this is not a method you want for media literacy. So the program, I think it's risk threatening the state power over its people, instead of empowering people and then give the knowledge for being how to be thinking critically. Yeah, I think that's all.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Dr. Idris. Thank you. So again, just a reminder to all our attendees, if you have any questions, you can start typing them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them after we're done with all the presentations. We can also allow you to talk or participate in a discussion later. So just let us know in the Q&A box or in the chat. So now we're going to take a look at the situation in China, and our next presenter is Dr. Rui Ray Huang. She's an associate professor in the School of Journalism and Communication at Beijing Normal University. Her research focuses on political communication, public opinion research, and she uses a lot of quantitative research methodology in her work. So without further ado, Dr. Huang.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tendak, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Ray, and it's my great pleasure to be invited to share with you the experience of China in combating misinformation during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to first give you a big background of the overall misinformation problem in China, and then focus on COVID-19 misinformation, which has become a global issue. I'll discuss the causes and consequences of COVID-19 misinformation dissemination, the preventative strategies implemented in China, and the effectiveness of these strategies. First, some background. So when we're talking about dis or misinformation, let's first talk about the political uniqueness of China. China's political system is a system of multi-party cooperation and public consultation under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, meaning that there's no party competitions like most Western countries. In addition, China has implemented very strict internet censorship. So there is very high cost, which I'll talk about later, to fabricate and disseminate disinformation in China. Therefore, on the one hand, disinformation about political parties, candidates, campaigns, etc., which are often seen in the West, is very rare in China. On the other hand, people are unlikely to have partisan biases when processing information. Therefore, misinformation is more prevalent in China. People share it either because they believe it's true or without thinking about accuracy. On the contrary, disinformation is likely to be disseminated to attract other people's attention or internet traffic for economic gains. So according to a 2018 study, the most prevalent type of misinformation in China is pseudoscience misinformation, which accounts for 47% of all the misinformation. The second category is about social affairs or public events, which accounts for 27%. Most COVID-19 misinformation falls into these two categories. The causes and consequences of COVID-19 misinformation. We analyzed debunking information between January and October 2020 and found that pseudoscience misinformation accounted for 23% of the COVID-19 misinformation, whereas 77% are misinformation or disinformation about new confirmed infections, new lockdowns, new prevention policies, etc. Preventative measures and miracle cures are the most common pseudoscience misinformation about COVID-19, which is quite similar to what has been found in the West. Social media platforms are the main channels to disseminate misinformation in China. For example, let's see. For example,
yeah, so we lost your screen. So you want?
Oh, you lost my screen?
Yes.
Oh, let me try. I probably clicked something. You can see.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, thanks.
Okay, I just accidentally clicked something, I guess. Sorry. So as I said, social media platforms are the main channels to disseminate misinformation in China. For example, WeChat, which has daily active users of 1.1 billion, is the hardest hit of misinformation, like this, either through the public accounts of self-media or chat groups of families or acquaintances. Another example is Weibo. It's a Twitter-like microblog where misinformation can reach more people via opinion leaders, like this one, which are called big Vs, those opinion leaders. Short video platforms such as TikTok have also become popular places where misinformation spreads. And this is a typical TikTok platform. So does misinformation spreading online affect people's discernment of COVID-19 related information? The answer is yes. Based on an online survey conducted in 2020, we found that people can only make correct judgments on less than half of COVID-19 related true or false information. For some factual items, their discernment was as low as 23.5%. So what factors affecting people's discernment? We found that people's scientific literacy, their media and information literacy are positively associated with their discernment, while their perceived information overload was negatively associated with discernment. In terms of affective factors, we found that people tended to believe in information arousing positive feelings, regardless of its facticity. Emotions seem to also interact with risk perceptions. We found in previous research that people tended to believe in misinformation that arouses negative emotions when their perceived risk is moderate, such as in the context of food safety issues. When their perceived risk is high, like in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, people tended to believe in information that can shed the light of hope. So what has China done to combat online misinformation? First, there are many laws and regulations that regulate what kind of information can be disseminated online, including criminal law, cybersecurity law, public security administration punishment law, etc. And also some other provisions. In 2015, China's State Internet Information Office initiated a real name system. Internet users must use their real identity to register their accounts, increasing the cost of wrong behavior on the internet. Online activities are constantly oversighted by the internet police, and wrongdoings, including spreading misinformation, can also be reported by other users. Here are some examples of disinformation spotted by law enforcement on Weibo and WeChat. If someone was caught for spreading mis or disinformation, their voices will be silenced and their accounts will be temporarily or permanently suspended. When causing serious consequences, they'll be punished in accordance with the Public Security Administration punishment law for administrative detention of 10 days or under, as well as some financial penalties. As you can see here, it says if the situation is serious, you get administrative detention of 5 to 10 days, and with financial penalty of 500 RMB or less. If the serious is minor, then you get administrative detention of 5 days under, or 500 RMB penalty or less. Based on the same content analysis, we identified over 100 misinformation debunking sources. The most important ones are internet platforms, which are also the main sources of misinformation dissemination. Traditional media also played important roles in misinformation rebuttals for their high credibility. Press conference is held whenever there are new infections reported to release credible information and debunk misinformation in a timely manner. There are also fact-checking strategies. I will give you a few examples. In 2015, Tencent founded the first fact-checking website in China. 3 years later, the Cyberspace Administration of China founded the first official fact-checking website. Recently, Weibo started to use a yellow tag, like this, circled in red, to flag false and unreliable information. WeChat also has a built-in mini program of debunking misinformation, like this. It posts debunking articles here, as you can see here, the debunking articles you can read, and list all the public accounts of debunking information that you can follow on WeChat. As you can see here, there's over 700 debunking sources that you can follow. There is also a page called Relevant to Me on the right, where you can see all the information you have read. As you can see here, I read 11 pieces of misinformation. And you also get notifications and alerts when you read articles on WeChat that contains unreliable information. In addition to debunking sites and tools, there are also science communication and education sites such as 果壳 and China Science Communication, which is initiated by the China Science and Technology Association, aiming at promoting public understanding of science. So are these strategies effective? I should say, in terms of combating disinformation, the answer is yes. As I said, the cost to fabricate and disseminate disinformation is too high and the benefits too low. Last year, the National Development and Reform Commission solicited opinions on a new policy that non-public capital must not engage in news gathering, editing, and releasing. Though not finalized, it reviews government's intention to continue tightening the media environment, regulating who can say what, both online and offline. In terms of combating pseudoscience misinformation, it's not so effective because, one, people are not cognitively competent, such as lacking of basic science knowledge and not used to fact-checkings. And they are easily getting emotionally charged and letting emotion override cognition when discerning new information. To compare with disinformation, the Chinese government paid less attention to pseudoscience misinformation unless it may spur social mobilization and cause collective actions. It seems that the top-down regulation oversight by the Chinese government has improved online environment to some extent, but in order to combat misinformation more effectively, China must work from the bottom up, such as gradually cultivating people's scientific and media literacies in order to enhance their discernment. I believe this is also the challenge we're all facing in this epidemic. And this is all I'd like to share with you today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Wang. Now we are going to our final presentation, and after that we will do our discussion. So please continue typing or sharing with us any questions or comments you want us to discuss later. So our final presentation will be about the situation in India, and presenting is Dr. Rubal Canosia. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Mass Communication and Media Studies at the Central University of Punjab. His research focuses on communication theories, mass communication, print media, program presentation for radio and television, as well as environment communication, advertising, and public relations. Dr. Canosia?
Thank you, Dr. Edson, for this opportunity to share about the situation of fake news and misinformation in India. In my presentation, I'll be talking about the misinformation spread during the pandemic, particularly in this COVID lockdown, and after that, and after the vaccines, the vaccine has come, then the several fake news and the misinformation pieces went viral, and that particularly was affecting to the vaccine rate in the in India. So an outbreak of fake news can perhaps be seen as another dimension to the existential crisis of this information age. The unchecked spread of fake messages and the inability to differentiate between authentic and inaccurate news has exploited the vulnerability of the masses staying at home isolated, already dreaded by the fear of pandemic and with some xenophobic content in India. False and misleading information about the COVID-19 vaccine has increased the vaccine hesitancy, and the anti-vaccine groups have come up with many far-fetched conspiracy theories about vaccines. Misleading information has been spread not just on the internet and the social media, but also shown on some national news platform. In India, what has happened? The fake news and the misinformation was a bit like spreading very rapidly on the social media and the internet, and some of the news channels, they started like they could not verify the things, and the same news story has been here. National news channel means they are talking about their coverage area. It's the private news channel. And this is in India, the elections are happening in 5 states. And now this is recently what we have observed. Another fake news item is being viral on social media, which talks about that the ruling party, this is a misinformation which is being spread on the name of by quoting the former chief election commissioner, Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy, that the news, the EVM, the electronic voting machine, is not safe, and the ruling, this has been mentioned in this fake news item, that the ruling party, that they won the election in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh by hacking the EVM. So these kind of claim, and later on the government went to like the election commission went to the police, and they ordered the one FIR, the first information report, and the police inquiry should be initiated, that how this has emerged and who are the people they are spreading it. In the another news story, that this is again that we all must agree with this, that most of the stories comes on like the most of the misinformation comes on political like for subject matter and the communal subject matter, because the people and the anti-social element have their interest in such things, because they want some kind of polarization to come, and definitely to favor some parties, some political parties, to attain the power and to be in the government. So this is the another fake news item that is widely being circulated, that the one attack, the one sad incident happened here. It is that like it was related to the attack on the convoy of military in India, and the same photograph that has been told, that has been spread on the social media, what like this has been done intentionally with the intentionally by the government. This has been projected in that fake news item, whereas that's not the case. But again, this is somewhat related to politics, and the elections were going on, and now again this old news item, because the elections are happening in the 5 states, this social media nowadays also. Then coming to the COVID, particularly what has happened during the COVID lockdown in India, the what kind of messages were spread. It was majorly it was related to the cure and the prevention remedies. You know, the people were talking that drinking freshly boiled garlic water is the ultimate remedy for the disease. No need to get hospitalized, to stay at home, because if once you go to the hospital, you won't come back with your family, because ultimately you may die in the hospital. So such kind of claims were taking rounds over the social media during the lockdown. Particularly the another was that hot water and lemon are enough to make the virus treat, and drinking water every 15 minutes can prevent you from catching the virus. Vitamin C can kill the virus if you have contracted it. So drinking, so all of a sudden the consumptions has gone up of vitamin C. Most of the people, they were regularly taking vitamin C. By keeping this thing in mind, they may prevent themselves from the virus by taking this. And then the drinking alcohol can kill the virus. We have seen one incident in one country where many people died by taking, you know, the over consuming liquor. That incident happened because such kind of rumors were taking rounds over the social media in India, particularly in remote areas. And then spraying of the alcohol on the whole body can prevent from the infection. The juice of bitter gourd help preventing the virus. Then some people were talking about that drinking some the drinks, you know, and that can prevent the virus. And the industry, the poultry industry, you know, they went with a huge loss because of the misinformation. Because there were misinformation that the virus may spread by eating meat, chicken, eggs, and seafood. So that there was all of a sudden, you know, downfall in the consumption of chicken, and don't eat cold food items like ice cream that increase chances of contracting the virus. Keep body warm by taking hot beverages like tea, coffee, frequent garlic, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, and the vegetarian foods. So the misleading messages, including the recorded phone calls claiming to be from the expert doctors and scientists, providing unverified information about the symptoms of coronavirus and the severity of its spread and effects on the economy was also reported. And there were several other fake updates like that was related to the wrong information about the lockdown in the country, and its extension periods were flooded on the WhatsApp. And there was misleading claims that the national emergency by the central government, wherein the Indian army and other forces would be recruited across the country for a strict lockdown. The message was itself debunked by the Indian army. And another misleading claim, you know, the viral audio presenting a conversation between two persons claimed that the WHO had asked India to extend its lockdown for certain reasons. And the false messages about impending scarcity of the essential commodities and the possible disruption of the demand and supply of the market led to people to panic buying and holding the ration food items and consumer goods. And some fake measures spread rumors about sealing of particular areas by police due to the presence of COVID active cases, which again led panic rush and buying, you know, household items and the food items in the area. Even the press information bureau that works under information and broadcasting ministry, they debunked the fake news, and they said where the prime minister of India has appealed that the people must contribute to the PM Cares Fund, so the generous donation could be made. But what has happened here is that an alternated account number, and that has been pasted on like they on one image, and that has been flooded. So the ultimately the PIB came forward, and they release tweeted, and they put some information on the Facebook that this account is, the screenshot which is being viral is not correct. So then there were communal and xenophobic content also, and that was a racist content, through misinformation. They were particularly targeting about minorities and some particular religious group, and there were I um, pardon me, Dr. Wang, this is about the China. One fake news item was getting viral here, went viral, that the Chinese authorities are killing their citizens to prevent uh, uh, COVID spread, and this fake news item particularly went viral in India. And then, some of the incidents were reported in the northeastern state, and the people, they were uh, being harassed, and the racist comment, like, because it is because they were trying to relate it with the China. This is the Chinese virus, and using the word chinky virus, that's the commenting on their appearance, that such kind of misinformation were taking rounds over the social media. And then there were several misleading videos, which spreads on social media sites, that claim to show that the minorities are engaging in the various activities to infect others with the virus. And some of the TV channels, the private TV channels, they stepped into the spread of misinformation, particularly doing the propagation against one group and the subgroups. And I don't know what was their attention, but slightly I can understand, their attention is to divert, the taking people's interest to one particular religious group. They are the one who are spreading, the virus in the country. And then there were the misleading claims related to vaccine also. The COVID-19 vaccine will damage DNA or permanently alter your genetics, and you will die within 2 years after taking the vaccination jab. But since we work in the university, and I have seen many of my the colleagues, they are not from the young colleague particularly, they were saying that somebody has died in our extended family just due to the WhatsApp. Even the some of the good, because sometimes media reports while they are making headlines, so the one very prominent newspaper reported in India that the 42% died after taking second jab, whereas they wanted to convey, because they could not convey in the title, it is the with the comorbidities and with the serious disease, they died after the getting due to this COVID-19 infection. And then the vaccine contains a chip to monitor public. So these kind of claims were there, and the vaccine will made one impotent, and the infertility rates would go high. So such kind of claims, that was creating a hindrance and obstacles in the efficient vaccine drive. But India has done a wonderful job in vaccination, because the second largest populated country of the world. And see, the second photograph is talking about that will you die within 2 years after taking COVID vaccine. So the central government burst this fake news report. And whereas this picture tells, this is a short documentary made by BBC, that for extensive and effective vaccination program, the Indian government and the health authorities and the workers of health departments, they they have reaching to the remotest part or even of the northeastern region for asking people to get vaccinated. So, and a remarkably a wonderful job has done in context of this vaccine reception in India. And then, but the why this has happened, this is very important to know that why this happened, because the transparent and accessible information in the local language was not available. People were not really much aware about the vaccine procedures, and the testing, the data was not initially available in public space, that how safe the vaccines are, because the majorly the misinformation was on um, misinformation was on the vaccine is not safe, the procedure have not been followed, and this may affect your health in the long term. So then the people, it is due to the political system that the people not trust much to the government agencies and the public agencies. The people have been apprehensive of the government when faced with something completely unknown, and the many believed the perceived role of politics in the development of vaccine, and the conspiracy theories we all know, since we all are from media background, we know that why they are doing, and what are the motives behind it. And the vaccine approval among people can sway depending on their political affiliation and the context also. And there were religious factors also. What has happened in the India is that some of the religious chair, they gave statement, this is to harm our religious group, the vaccine is to make us impotent. When the such kind of claims, when such kind of statements emerge in the media, so ultimately there were high chances of the people starts hesitating. And for example, here it is believed the pork is forbidden in Islam and the cow meat is forbidden in Hinduism. So when such kind of fake news item emerged, so the people were reluctant to take the vaccine. And the one fake news item was that it is to make Muslims impotent in India. So such claims, ultimately resulting in the low rate of vaccination. And there was a common belief, that the God will protect us from the virus. We are strong enough. Let's pray to the Almighty, and He will take care of us. So there were other factors also, the low literacy rate, that was one reason. And the people, were not able to apply critical thinking. So that is the one reason, because we all believe that we need to spread the media literacy, and media and information literacy. We need to take it to the school level and to the college level, and let us take it to the now in the older adult also. We are talking that media literacy is needed, because in India the older adults, they are nowadays, they're one segment of the society. They are consuming online information, and they are not too techy also, because they are not aware. They say like there are some unverified pages on Facebook, and they keep spreading. We know what is their idea behind, because they want maximum click and to generate the revenue. And like my mom, she keeps sharing, I read a news on Facebook, this is going to be happen. I all
Yeah, we all have those experiences, right, with our parents or aunties. It's something that resonates with many of us. So thanks, Dr. Canosia, and I'm sure there's more to share during the Q&A. I just to again remind our attendees that if you want to view the presentations again, we will be uploading the presentations on YouTube. You can check out the link in our website, so our NCube website. You can take a screenshot of or take use the QR code to go to our website. That's what I wanted to say. And yeah, you can also learn about our work on fake news in Singapore by going to our website at ntu.edu.xg/incube. Our work and this webinar is supported by the Social Science Research Council in Singapore. So that's just a brief pitch for our website. And thank you to all our presenters for very fascinating, insightful presentations. Before I go to the main questions, yeah, I think while I was watching through the presentations, what struck me was, while many studies on fake news looking at predictors of being susceptible to fake news, they've looked at individual level factors, right? Like confirmation bias, selective exposure, cognitive capacity, cognitive ability. So these are all individual level factors. But for me, my takeaway from all your presentations is the important role of institutions as well, right? Like how we saw across the presentations, the role of the state in either controlling the flow of information that might backfire, or by enabling certain pro-state groups to actually take part in the propagation and spread of misinformation. I saw the role of the news media as well, where in some countries, because like in Iga's presentation, how the motivation for profit is also looks like driving some traditional media players into playing into the handbook of fake news propagators, trying to do clickbait and maybe prioritizing speed over accuracy. And I think something that we also heard from some of your presentations, especially most recently from Rubel's presentation, is also the role of religion, right? So these are socially accepted, legitimized institutions that may be either consciously or inadvertently playing a significant role in propagating or facilitating the spread of fake news and other types of misinformation. I'm seeing that we have now, we have some questions in the chat, so I will start reading them one by one. So we have a few questions from Chris. First question from Chris is asking about the influence of culture. And I think this is what's good with this presentation, is that we're able to see the situation across countries, and in our case, across, I think, among the most populous countries in the world, right? So does culture play a role in this? And I think another question from Chris, so maybe you can answer both at the same time, is how sensitive are governments to violations of freedom of expression when they combat fake news? So who wants to answer first? Maybe let's go in the order of the presentation. Maybe let's go back to Bahia. What do you think about culture, and what role does it play?
Okay, since in Malaysia we have multicultural society, and I think culture played a role in terms of the kind of fake news they circulated among them. I mean, if for Muslims, for example, there are certain things that we practice, that are practice of Islam that we do, like we don't eat pork, we don't drink alcohol, and then people tend to use that to fake things. To, let's say, just like examples that I gave just now, like they said that certain restaurant serving this, so that Muslim won't go to that place, and also the halal kind of thing that is very strongly believed by Muslim, and it has been used quite often to disseminate this kind of discomfort and panic or anxiety among the people. And sometimes they use this to attack certain business, like for example, they say that restaurant has this element, so people don't go there, so they become their sales decrease. And also for Chinese, they have their own belief as well, and they might use that as well to fake things, like you believe in feng shui, right? So perhaps that can also agitate certain kind of people are creative to create this kind of fake things, false information related to beliefs and things. That's what's happening.
So basically, like those who create fake news are are exploiting cultural artifacts, right?
Yes,
To
yes.
make to first, I think to make to sow certain tensions, right? To play into certain controversies or stoke may provoke people, but also maybe looking at cultural artifacts as a way to make their claims appear more credible, appear more plausible, right?
And also sometimes to gain profit as well. I remember because I'm Muslim, I know about Muslim issues.
Yes.
So we are encouraged to eat certain kind of food based on recommended by Islam, right? And then there are those who take advantage of this, saying, this is what recommended, but it's not. So they tend to do this to sell their product, or they come up with medicine and they say, this medicine is something that Islam said good, and in reality it's not. It's just local kind of things, and that gain profit as well. I think cultural play an important role in creating this fake.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Let me ask Ika. I mean, again, looking at Chris' question now on violations of freedom of expression. So in government's attempt to combat fake news, how sensitive do you think, looking at Indonesia, how sensitive is the Indonesian government in balancing, addressing fake news, but also not compromising freedom of expression?
So if you read about how Indonesian government combating fake news, there has been some research, like how government cherry picks in closing down websites or social media accounts, especially during the demonstration or conflicts. I have an article related to conflicts in Papua that time. So even we also need to consider the fact-checking organization that work closely with the government, because during that time, especially during the conflict, you need to see like during that conflict, whether the government or the opposition, everyone's play with the fake news, but which stories that got fact checking, which stories that claim as hoaxes. Like I think we need to look at that, because during especially conflict or demonstration, I think there's a tendency, there's a government opposition get claims more as hoaxes or fake news instead of the government, I don't know, pro-government information, pro-government fake news. So I think at some point we need to be really careful, because everything now, especially with the law, information and transaction, electronic transaction law, everything can be stamped as fake news. But we need to also consider, do we have other at some point government also spread fake news or disinformation, and then they correct it lately. And then, but do we consider it as a fake news or not? Whether the government clarify it after that or correct it, the news is already spread. So we need to see. I think it's still work on progress, right?
I think even as we're figuring out the extent and the nature of the fake news problem, the interventions being designed are also still work in progress. Like we don't know what's going to work, and there might be unintended consequences. Fact checks. I think Ika, in your presentation, you've mentioned how some fact checking sites might also be perceived as biased in terms of what they fact check and how they do their fact checking. And similarly, I think a government intervention might also then result in tighter control, right, of expression and media systems.
Yes, yes, correct. Yeah, but just to add on that, I think right now we also, because we put, I don't want to I don't want to accuse the fact-checking organization, but there's a lot of fact-checking organization right now, and then we need to also look where they got their funding, and then who they are working with, because maybe for like health health topic or entertainment topic, they will do the best objectively, but for political issues, and especially during conflict, we need to really see what they are checking and their
Yes, and I think, I mean, what's encouraging is a lot of the fact checking sites we're seeing across countries are also, I think, more transparent than say their traditional media predecessors, right, in terms of being transparent with their funding mechanisms, even the methods that they use to fact check. I think that's an encouraging thing to see. Let me go to Ray. Again, a similar question from Chatin. Doesn't tightly regulating the media environment stifle freedom of expression, especially when the government can decide who can say what? So this question is specifically addressed to you.
That's a really good question. I think my quick answer is yes, but it seems that the government has a very strong intention to continue tightening the media environment. Just as I said, the last year, the National Development and Reform Commission, they just got this new policy and asking people's opinion, and there's a lot of interpretation on that, because it starts to regulate, like the non-public capital cannot gather news gathering and editing and releasing. I think this is the government attention to regulate the self media, the we media on especially on WeChat and other social media platforms, because these are the main sources of disinformation in China. Yes, I think that's you cannot like criticize. We got a lot of criticize from Western countries, especially the United States, like every year, and say there's no freedom of speech in China. But it's kind of like two-sided. In one way, it's a very effective way to control disinformation in China, but in another, it's just control what people say or what they can say. And also, I want to give an example of the like in the current COVID-19 epidemic, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name of Li Wenliang. It's a doctor who first sent out the alarm of this new virus. He was actually first he was caught by the police and saying that he is spreading misinformation, disinformation, and he got punishment for that. But then he became a hero who's sending the alarm to the whole world. So I guess China learned the lessons after that, and then they started to like make the information more transparent and like holding press conference more often when there's new cases reported, and it's like a daily basis press conference. Yeah, I think I don't know, but it seems like the government is tightening the media environment like more and more.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Let me just do a quick follow-up. So while you're presenting, I noted that. So you say that the most common type of fake news in China, it would be pseudoscience, right? And we don't see a lot of political fake news, unlike in Western countries. Is this because not many individuals try to create political fake news, or is it because the government has been really focusing on controlling the spread of political fake news?
That's a good question. I think your observation is right. You can. I'm not sure if you read the article I cited in my presentation, the King, Penn, and Roberts paper in 2013, and based on their study, there are like criticisms of the party and the government spreading online. But based on their analysis, the government seems not worried about those information criticizing the party or the government, unless it does not cause like social mobilization or collective actions. The things that the government's worried about is collective actions, unless it does not causing any collective actions or social mobilizations. It's okay to post those criticisms online. So I think you're probably right, because internet censorship is constantly in China. So maybe before we read those information, those contents online, they already been deleted by the government. So yeah.
So thanks Ray. Let me go to Rubal. So there's a question from Chris. And let me just quickly paraphrase this, because I think we didn't have much time left for your presentation, Rubal. But what's the government in India doing in response to fake news, and how effective are government efforts?
The government started, this is the INB ministry, which deals with the information and broadcasting ministry. They established a particularly one unit where they ask people to please send whatever the claim you receive on social media, and you send it to us. And if any news related to government or any ministry or any department, so you send it to us, and they try to debunk it. And nowadays, that immensely popular also. But despite of government's efforts, like the fact-checking website are also doing wonderful job in the country. And some of the it was the Google News initiative that created the immense popularity and the awareness among the people. Even some of the NGOs, they are doing good job, like wonderful task by making people literate about what is fake and what is fact, and what the misinformation is, and particularly taking the things that how the misinformation can harm and affect our structure. And these are the majorly things which are being done from the government side, and some fact-checking agencies and some NGOs in the India.
Okay, thanks, Rubal. Let me go back to Bahia. There's a question from Rehan in the Q&A. You mentioned about how there was, before in 2018, there was a fake news law that was quickly passed, but it was then revoked when the new administration came in. But then there was another, was it an executive order, or basically like they put something in place again, right, later? So I think the question there is, what are the political implications of having this new legal mechanism in Malaysia? How has it affected the extent to which fake news stays in Malaysia?
Okay, there's as in my presentation, I said that Malaysia always want to introduce new laws to curb the fake news, but unfortunately, always been criticized heavily. Okay, the criticism is that the existing law is already sufficient to handle this kind of pandemic, this kind of problem, the threat of fake news. But the counter argument said that the existing law is too broad. The CMA, Communication Multimedia Act, for example, covers all under it, any electronic information that falls into it, and the ruling is broad, and therefore there's a need to come up with a specific law, because fake news is complex, right? There are many types. There are hoax, there are rumors, there are some intention, some without intention. So they need a law that specifically look into this dimension, this very, very complex issue. And this law, however, being proposed during the election, and people see this to be not a desperate move by the then government to back them up. So it being repelled, and now the image is bad. Okay, the image is bad, as if you are covering things like because of the election, you introduce it a month before election to actually wanting to stop people from accusing you with many things. And at that time, the political party has been accused with many scandals, I mean corruption things. So the image to the government was bad, and that also actually when they want to introduce it, the fake news situation is very bad, because as I said, Malaysia is one of the countries that use cyber troopers. So the cyber troopers, the fake bots, have been dominating the social media during the election, that caused the dominant political party in a very negative light. And that's the reason why they want to introduce this law. That connection makes people think this is a very dishonest move by the government, and it has a very negative implication. And when they lost, and one of the things that people said, why the dominant government who ran the country for 30 years lost, is because of the fake news and related to the introduction of this fake news act. And then they always have this connection. There's no study to prove it, but people will say, because of the fake news, they lost. And the new government, but also now not the current government, repel it and revoke it. And then now they introduce this emergency ordinance. And on the basis that there are so many fake news on COVID-19, then they want to curb that. And this, when they declare emergency ordinance, they don't have to go through this approval in the parliament. So that's a very clever move by the government of the day. But people see it negatively as well. If you ask me the implication on the government, people don't see rules, law enforcement is a good thing. Never been a good thing. It has, and as I said, our ranking for freedom of expression dropped to 18 points because of the introduction of the emergency ordinance. So if you ask me, it's always been dilemma in Malaysia about this law enforcement. We are very much into this because currently the mainstream media is also ruled by law. But to the government, this is the only way to curb, to deter, because of the condition of our country, because of the sensitivity, the harmony that they need to preserve. So we always resort to law. So that's how it is. Implication is bad, but we don't have other things to do. I mean, there's no other mechanism that been being used.
That's I mean, in a way that's part of the government's responsibility is to look into legislation, right? But there are certain problems and to some extent fake news that may be very difficult. It's very difficult to legislate our way out of it, right? I think there should be a combination of efforts, and like what Rui Ray said, like both top down and bottom up approaches should be looked at. There's one interesting thanks Bahia. There's one interesting question from Prof. Alan de Guzman from the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines. And I'd like to ask this first to Ika. Since the research on digital misinformation, disinformation is still in its infancy, what kind of support policies and infrastructure is in place to support university research in this area?
So one thing at least in Indonesia context, for the communication and journalism department, I think we need to understand about the big data, the digital data analytics, or how the digital platform works. Because if we fake news at some part, especially like in Indonesia, in Malaysia, there's cyber troopers. And if you want to understand the I don't know, digital propaganda, how it spreads, I think we need to have that, not only the skill of the skill of data analytics, but also the infrastructure. I mean, the lab for that. And then the cooperation or collaboration with the digital platform. I know digital platform, you can contact them and then they can give you support at least to access their data, such as Facebook and or also Google. You can contact them and then they can support you with that. I think at least for the beginning.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Ika. Ray, I also want to raise the same question to you. Is this research area a priority for universities in China? Been looking into the problem of fake news?
Yes, but only in the like health communication or sales communication field. Yeah, because I used to be a political communication person, but you know, this is very sensitive in China. So most fake, that's why I'm not calling it fake news, because news cannot be fake in China. And those like official media, the mainstream media, they don't say they produce fake news. And also news is very controlled by the government. So it's really high cost to produce fake news in China. So misinformation in China is mostly focusing on the like health misinformation and like those scientific topics. Yeah, pseudoscience misinformation. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I have one last question. I mean, we have lots of questions, and I think if our panelists can just answer them by responding to our comments, or maybe we can continue this conversation offline, just because we don't want to keep everyone for too long. But I have one final question for Ruba. In your presentation, you talked about the constraints posed by diversity in language, and that like why some people may not understand legitimate information because they're not available in vernacular. But is this something that but it seems like fake news claims can transcend language barriers. Do you see any pattern where certain fake news are translated into various languages? And I think this might also be an issue in Indonesia with such diverse languages. What's the experience in India, Ruba?
In a few cases, the photographs has been taken from an old incident and the particularly writing in that particular language. For example, this happens with the elections related news item. They talk about the EVM that is being hacked to win the election, and the same photograph that is for example, the elections are happening in Punjab where I reside. So the item has been translated in Punjabi. This is the language which we speak here, and that is being circulated. This happens, and for that purpose, like if it comes in the notice of Press Information Bureau, then they try to debunk it. And but in in Delhi, that is the national capital media institution running from Delhi, they have started their own fact-checking unit. Like most of the mainstream media, they are doing it now. And in some of the in Punjab, I hardly find any fact-checking unit particularly established by any of the media house and any of the government agencies. And what happens is that when we do seminars, a set of media educators, when they do seminars for public and for the non-journalist background students, and sometimes we reach to the community, and sometimes we reach to the some societies like residential society, that this is what exactly a fake news and misinformation we are consuming, and these are the ways to counter them. We tell them that you can use these helplines started by media institutions, and you can use this Press Information Bureau's helpline. And we also being the media educator and the researcher, where we take a workshop on media literacy and the critical thinking program, and then we keep receiving information from the people. And what happened is that when the people are engaged in the habit of debunking a fake claim, so they keep informing the audience on their social media. That is what I found the most the happiest part of the story. When the people, they came to know that this claim is being, after those workshops, we have seen that they are after those interventions and the inoculations, their level of understanding and identifying a fake claim and the fact has gone up. And then they claim, and then they tag you on the social media. This is what I found. This was a fake news item, and I just Google it, and I found it on a fact checking website. The claim is not true. This is a false. So this is what I feel is the trio of government agencies and the fact checking institution and the media institution and the NGOs. They can bring a change in Indian setup.
That's good to hear. I think, and on that positive note, I mean, that also addresses. I see that Navneet has Nishant has a question in the chat. So about what solutions, and I think there's one type of solution that I think from Rubel's account is working, right? When you involve people at the grassroots level, right? They also then help spread fact checks and take part in the debunking. So I think we can end on that a positive note. I know there's still more to be done, there are more conversations to have. So thanks to all of those who attended our webinar this month. We will be organizing another one looking at other countries next month. So we will send an invite very, very soon. I'd like to thank our panelists for their insightful presentations today. And I hope to continue the conversations and the collaborations with the four of you. And I will email you about the project that we've discussed briefly.